Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, welcome back to another video, and today I am doing a review of Bratz Flaunt Your Fashion. If you've been on my channel recently, you'll have seen that I did a full let's play of this game, and today I am going to be giving it my full thoughts, because I did say while I was playing it I had a lot of thoughts, a lot of opinions, so I'm going to give you a full review. Now, it is currently the 15th of December when I'm recording this, so I'm hoping that if I get it out soon, you know, if you're someone who's maybe thinking about asking for it for Christmas, or you're thinking of spending your Christmas money on it, you know, maybe you want someone to give you a bit of a review so you know whether or not it's worth getting, whether it's worth getting it in like a Boxing Day or a January sale, you know, when it's maybe a bit cheaper, that kind of thing. And especially if you're looking for a review from someone who is a long-time Bratz fan and someone who's played all of the mainline Bratz games, and you want an opinion on whether or not this one holds up, then I'm your gal, because I've played them all. I have full let's plays of all of them on my channel. Big Bratz fan, so yeah, I'm here to just basically give you my opinions, tell you my thoughts, and whether I think, you know, you should get it full price, get it on sale, or whether you should not get it at all. Of course, you don't have to take my word for it. I am just one person. My views are not gospel. But I'm giving you my opinions as someone who has played all the Bratz games, and kind of how I think this one holds up in comparison, because it is quite different in a lot of ways from the previous games. So if you're expecting a game that's exactly like the old ones, that's definitely not what you're getting with this one. But I still had a lot of fun with it. I will say that straight off the bat, is that like I did really enjoy playing this game. I had a lot of fun. But there is a lot of things that I think it could improve on, so that's kind of what I want to talk about today. Got my pros and cons for this game. So yeah, I think we'll just head right into it. So I'm going to start off with the negatives, because I just think maybe you probably want to know where this game could improve first, so you can kind of decide if this is something you're going to enjoy. But on top of that, also because it means that we end on a high note, you know what I mean? Like, if I start with the cons, then we end with the pros, and we end with all the things that I liked about the game. And that's a nicer way to round off the video than talking about what I didn't like about it. So, but looking at my list, because I've got it written down here, I do have more cons than pros. So bear that in mind as we go into this. Like I say, I did enjoy this game. So don't think just because I'm saying I've got more cons and pros that it's automatically a terrible game. It isn't. But there are a lot of things we need to talk about. Right, so let's just kick off, and I haven't really got these in any kind of order, so I'm hoping that I can put it into some kind of logical narrative when I start talking. So we'll just head into it and see what we do. Sort of, I think that probably the biggest thing that you will notice, and probably the first thing that's really going to be like, for you, is the world itself. Now, technically, there are more locations, I'd say, than the previous Bratz games, because there are 3 main cities: Stylesville, Barcelona, and Seoul, and then also New York, but New York is only one location. But each location has like an apartment, a mall, an airport, and then like another place, or like another 2 places. So like Stylesville has a park and the theatre, Barcelona has the extreme games and the beach, Seoul has the art exhibition and the fashion show event. So there are like 5 different locations in each world, each city, and then just one final location for New York, which I was disappointed about, because I expected New York to be a full city like the other 3. I didn't expect it to be one location, so I was quite disappointed by that, because I expected more out of New York. That was kind of a bit of a letdown for me personally. So it feels like it should be bigger, because like, you know, in the original games, like take Rock Angels for example, you know, you've got the mall, the fashion promenade, Dance Heaven Plaza. Actually, Rock Angels was bigger in a lot of ways. Rock Angels had the mall, Dance Heaven, the promenade, Dance Heaven Plaza, the park, and the office plaza. But then from Diamonds, they reduced it down to being the mall, the fashion promenade, Dance Heaven Plaza, and then the office plaza was just the office foyer, and they got rid of the park and they put in an ice rink. so it was smaller. And then when you went to the other places, such as like London, it was like one street. Paris was like, well, it was one square. Paris was one street. I mean, yeah, you had like your hotel room or in the final location where you went to like do your final show. So in a lot of ways, it feels like the world should be bigger, or it feels like there are more locations in Flaunt Your Fashion than there are in the previous games. However, it doesn't feel that way when you play it. It feels small, and I think a lot of that is to do with the way that the game is made. So if you did see my playthrough, you'll see me complaining over and over again about how annoying I found the camera and the way that the game is quote-unquote filmed. So the game is set from a fixed camera angle. You can move the camera up and down, but you can't, it's not a dynamic camera. You can't spin it around, you can't bring it close into your character, you can't zoom in on anything. It's either up above your character, a little bit lower, or like kind of down a bit, but it's not dynamic. You can't move it. It's like on a fixed rig, basically. And what I did say is that it feels like the camera of Animal Crossing, and that the game is 2D. You're watching it from like, it feels as if you're watching a sitcom, you know, like you're in the audience of Friends, you know? So like the set is there, but you'll never be able to see it from the other way around. You'll never be able to spin the camera and see the other direction, because you can only ever watch it from this direction, because it's as if you're watching a sitcom on a set, you know what I mean? And I said that in the game, like, Animal Crossing works because that's the way it's always been. It works on that rolling log effect, and that's part of the style of Animal Crossing. It's a stylistic choice. But for Bratz, considering it used to have a dynamic camera, it used to have a 3D environment, you could spin the camera around, you could see everything, you were in a 3D world that you were present in with your character, it feels very weird that this game is made with the fixed camera so that you always feel as if you're watching it from a drone. You don't, for me at least personally, it doesn't make me feel like I'm there with the character, like experience these things. It feels like I'm watching it from a helicopter. It's a really jarring thing when you first turn it on. I found it really jarring. When it first started, I was like, oh, I hate this camera, this is awful. And as much as I got used to it as the game went on, I still never grew to like it. I just kind of tolerated it. And I think that makes the world feel smaller because you don't feel like you're there. It doesn't feel like a real world. And because you're watching it from the sky, it feels small because you're not down at eye level with your character looking around at this mall or looking around at the fashion promenade. You know, you're not standing in this world with your character taking in the environment. You're hovering from a helicopter looking down on this town of ants that just makes everything feel small. But that's not the only problem with the world. It's not just that the world feels small, it's that the world is also kind of uninspired. There are nice locations, like, you know, some of it looks nice, but it doesn't have a lot of charm or feeling to it. So you'll remember in the 4 games, to clarify, when I say the old games, I mean Bratz Rock Angels, Bratz Forever Diamonds, Bratz the Movie, and Bratz Girls Really Rock. The PS2 Wii era games, those. Yeah, so you remember back in the old games that the Stylesville Mall was the actual mall from the movies and the TV show. They had recreated that mall, the location that the characters were always in Stylesville, and put it in the game. They had taken the actual place that we saw on screen and put it in the game, which is how they could use the cutscenes from the actual movie and the actual show, because it was the same location. So they could pull cutscenes from other Bratz media and put them in the games because it was a perfect recreation of the Stylesville Mall. In this game, it's absolutely not. So you show up in the Stylesville Mall and it is not the Stylesville Mall you know. They have tried to make it resemble it. So the smoothie bar is there. That little pond with the red bridge that goes across it is there. They are trying to put in things that you will recognise from the Stylesville Mall to kind of say, like, this is the Stylesville Mall. But it's not the Stylesville Mall that you know. I don't know what the logic was to this. Like, obviously, the original code and all of the assets for the old Bratz games belong to Bratz, a company that, as if you watch my Bratz playthroughs, you'll know I know a lot about Bratz because my uncle worked there for many years. But they shut down a long time ago. They shut down, they had a Phoenix company, the Phoenix company shut down, and then the Phoenix company was bought over by Rebellion, and they now function as Rebellion Warwick. So I don't know if Rebellion Warwick still have any of the old Bratz assets. I have no idea. My uncle left when the Phoenix company shut down, so I can't ask him anything about Rebellion Warwick. He wouldn't know. But I don't know if they still have any of those assets. I don't know if they own them. But the thing is, the Stylesville Mall was an MGA asset. You know what I mean? It came from the show. It wasn't like it was developed by... It wasn't created by the development team for the game. It was created by whoever animated the show, and then they recreated it for the game. So I can't really think why they couldn't recreate the mall for the game, other than because they decided to film it from a terrible camera angle and needed everything to look exactly the same. But it is really disappointing if you were looking forward to, like... I mean, I didn't really expect it to be exactly the same. I genuinely didn't, especially from the trailer. It was quite obvious that it was different. But if for some reason you were expecting to go back to the old world that you know from the 4 classic Bratz games, then you won't be doing that, because it's not the same. But as well, they have three different malls. You know, you've got the mall in Stylesville, the mall in Barcelona, and the mall in Seoul. But they are very similar. They all look different, like they're different locations, they're styled different, they've got different things. Like when you go to Seoul, it's not like a smoothie bar, it's a bubble tea stand, because bubble tea is very popular in South Korea. But they are still very similar overall. It's all the shops are just rectangular, like cuboid buildings that are just plonked there. There's no kind of interesting design choices. There's no kind of... Everything just kind of looks the same. It's just kind of copy-pasted blocks that they've used in each town. And I still like the cities. They still looked nice. But they don't really have the charm of, like... Remember in the old games, you know, when you went to London, it genuinely looked like a place in London, and it had the London, you know, if you looked up, you could see the London Eye, you could see Big Ben. You know, when you went to New York, you could go to a very, very small version of Central Park. When you went to Florida, it had, like, the nice beach and everything. Like, they just, I don't know, it's just very copy-pasted. Like, every city in Flaunt Your Fashion has a coffee shop that looks exactly the same, and every city in Flaunt Your Fashion, the fashion store is called Strut It. You remember Strut It from Stylesville and the old games? But for some reason in Flaunt Your Fashion, every store is called Strut It. They didn't even bother to give them other store names, and this is another big issue that I want to talk about, which is another reason why the shops, why the cities feel so small, is because each city only actually has 3 stores that you can visit. You'll remember, one of the things that was so fun about the old Bratz games was the amount of stores that you could go to, and they all had, like, really fun names. So off the top of my head, you know, in the mall, you had City Looks, which was the makeup shop, you had Thrills with Frills, you had Strut It, Hats Off, Stylize, all these different places where you could go shopping, right? And then in the Fashion Promenade, there was a Claire's, I think there was an Accessorize at one point, there was Rocket, the shop where you could buy music, there was the phone shop, there was Kiss and Makeup. And then you had your other stores like Dynamic Design, Picture Perfect, like there was loads of places that you could go and visit, plus all of the places to dance. So you had like the Limelight stage to go to, you had like the cinema that you could visit, the pet store. There were loads of stores, and then of course when you went to the other cities, they had stores too. So like when you went to London, there was Punkadelic that you could go into. When you went to France, to Paris, there was like, I can't remember the name of it, but there was a fashion store in Paris. There was a whole load of stores that you could go to in New York. In this game, Flaunt Your Fashion, each mall only has 3 stores. There are no stores in any other location, it's only the mall. 3 stores. There is a fashion store called Strut It, a beauty store, where you can buy your makeup and hair, and a tech store where you can buy upgrades to your camera and your computer, which you will hardly ever need to do, because once you have the best camera, that's you sorted. And I never upgraded my computer at all through the entire game because you absolutely don't need to. There's no reason to do so. You really don't need to do that. So when you go to each place, you don't really get to that thing of like, let's go shopping, because there's only 2 stores that you'd actually want to go to, the fashion store and the beauty store. And obviously you go to them, you buy everything they've got, but that's all there is. And they don't even have fun names. The fashion store is called Strut It, and the beauty store I think is just called like Beauty Store. I'm pretty sure it's something like that. Like, I don't even think it's got a proper name. And it's like, where are all the old ones? And the thing is, in the malls, there are loads of other buildings, which when I played it, assumed would open up as the game went on. They do not. And they just have closed signs on the door. And I kept joking throughout the game that it looked like a town that had been ravaged by the pandemic and all the shops had shut down and there was only 3 stores left that were open, which is such a depressing thing to look at. But that's all I could think was like, this looks like any UK high street right now in the post-pandemic Britain, where everything has been shut down and replaced with vape shops. Like, that's the state of most British high streets right now, and that's what Stylesville feels like, as well as Barcelona and Seoul in this game. It feels like a city that has been ravaged by the pandemic and now nothing can open. And that for me is a real problem, because going shopping in the Bratz games was one of the big highlights. And not just shopping, but just having loads of different places, and they all had their own unique design. The shops weren't copy-pasted either. They were all designed in like their own way. They weren't, in this game, they're all just a block, right? So you go in the fashion store, it's just a rectangle, it's got some mannequins, it's got a desk with a cashier, maybe like a seat. The beauty store, you know, it's got some mirrors along the wall, the bits where you would sit and get your hair and makeup done, and some shelves. The tech store looks like an Apple store, so it's got some tables with like some tablets and stuff sitting on them, and a desk with the cashier. They're all just rectangles with slightly different assets in them, whereas in the old games all the shops were like designed differently. Like, you went into dynamic design and it had that big staircase that went up with the like the green glass thing on the stairs. Picture Perfect, was that what that shop is even called? I could be wrong. It also had stairs. Like City Looks had the kind of pillar right in the middle of the shop and everything was behind it. The Foot Locker and the Fashion Promenade was huge, and it had that kind of thing where it had the steps that went down into like a kind of valley bit where all the stands were. The shops all looked different. Rocket, remember Rocket? Like, it had like a kind, you went in and there was like stands, and then you went up a kind of slope and round to the back onto this sort of balcony where all the music was that you could buy. And there was a bit where you could dance up there as well. So like, all the shops were designed differently. They all were unique stores, whereas in this game everything's just a copy-pasted square. And it's just so sad. It's so sad that they don't have that. And I've put this on my list as well, so we'll just, while I'm talking about shops, we'll just go with this. It's also so much less immersive. Now, I'm not one of these people who's like gung-ho for immersion in games, right? I know there are some people who get really angry anytime they encounter a menu or there's a HUD, like, you know, because it takes them out of the experience. I don't really care if I know that I'm in a video game, but you have to feel some sort of immersion. The Bratz games were really good for immersion because you were with your character and you actually went to places. So like, you know, you went into a store and you didn't go up to the shop assistant, you went up to the mannequins, and the mannequins were all sitting out, and all the mannequins were a different line of clothes. So you could go into Thrills with Frills and you could go up to the Treasures mannequin and look at the Treasures clothes. But then maybe you needed the shoes, so you need to go down to the shoe store and get the shoes to go with your outfit. Maybe you wanted some sunglasses to go with your outfit, so you need to go to Stylize. And maybe, like, I get, maybe, and this is one of the more contentious things on my list, so maybe you're out there and you're thinking to yourself, well, Lauren, I hated that aspect. I hated that I had to trek to multiple different shops to get a whole outfit. Like, who can be bothered? And that's entirely fair. If that's how you feel, that is entirely fair. You will like the fact that in this game, all you have to do is walk into the store, walk up to the store assistant, and a menu will come up with all the clothes that store sells, and they're all tagged with what like what type of clothes they are and what fashion line they're from. So, you know, whether they're rock angels or hot summer days or whatever. You will definitely like that aspect of this game, but for me, that was a step back. Now, the thing is, back in the PS2 days, the Rock Angels game came out in like 2005 or 2006, that kind of time, I think. And obviously back in the PS2 time, loading times in games were quite bad. And there was a lot of time you spent looking at that thing on the screen spinning, saying, like, be patient, it takes time to look this good. But we're talking about PS4, PS5, Xbox Series SX, Xbox One, Switch. These things all have really good loading times. We actually, if the issue that they were trying to avoid was having to sit through a lot of loading screens by having to go up to each individual mannequin and then go into a different shop and then having to load the store and then go into the store and then load the mannequin, which was like, I'm sure that's an issue some people had with the old games, was the amount of loading screens you had to sit through just to like get a whole outfit. But that's not going to be an issue in this day and age, because even if you're playing on a last gen console or on your Switch, this is not a resource heavy game. It's not exactly trying to load, you know, Horizon Zero Dawn or Horizon Forbidden West open world, or God of War Ragnarok's open world, or Elden Ring's open world. It's trying to load a very small location with some not particularly heavy graphical things. So the fact that if they were trying to avoid making you sit through a loading screen, I don't really think that was necessary, because it wouldn't have taken that long to load it, and it would have made the game feel more immersive. I just like the fact that in the old games you actually felt like you were in the game, going around, going shopping, physically going and looking at the stalls, and they just took all of that away in this game, and for me that's just a real letdown. It's definitely not got the level, and I can't believe I'm saying this. I can't believe I'm sitting here being like, oh, Bratz Rock Angels was one of the most immersive games. But actually, when you see how much this game has taken away, you realise how much immersion there was in that game and how much you felt like you were there. Like, you were physically at the Stilesville Mall. You were with Jade and you were going shopping and you were going to the smoothie bar, and it just feels like, it felt like you were actually part of this world, whereas in Flaunt Your Fashion, you feel like you're looking at the world. I think that's the thing, and even from the camera angle, you know, in Bratz, like the old Bratz games, your camera was sitting kind of over your character's shoulder or like behind their back, and you felt like you were there, that you were with them. Whereas in this game, you feel like you're watching it from the sky, and it's like, I don't feel like I'm there. I don't feel like this is my experience. I feel like I'm watching something else, watching something happen. So it has actually lost a lot of immersion from the old games, which is unfortunate, really. And speaking of taking things away, one of the things I think that is certainly a big loss for this game is actually the quests themselves are nowhere near as interesting as the old ones. They are mostly fetch quests. It's a lot of go and talk to this person, go and talk to this person, find 3 apples at the park, you know, go and interview this person, or go and take photos at this place, go and find 3 people who've got pets. It's a lot of just go around and look for things, and it's not got like, remember the fun dance games where you'd have to like do the button, it was like a rhythm game, you'd have to like do the button combinations and they would do like a dance move on the catwalk or at the limelight or whatever. That's gone. Nowadays, the game is that you take photos with your camera, and you basically just have to move the camera like reticule thing over the box and take a photo, and that's the mini game. So all the kind of fun dance mini games are gone. The music rhythm games are still there. There's a yoga mini game now, which kind of functions like the mini games out of Fable 2. If you've ever played Fable 2 and you did like the bartender mini games and stuff like that, it's a lot like that. Yoga mini game, things like that, but they're nowhere near as interesting to me as the old dance mini games. There's absolutely no designing, even though at one point the Bratz are making their own designs, but you don't design them. There's no making t-shirts, there's no making clothes, there's no making posters. That whole aspect is gone, which is such a shame, because going down to dynamic design and making the ugly ass t-shirt or making the most atrocious poster and sticking it up all over the city was such a fun aspect of those games, and that's not here at all. Even though, like I say, there is a bit in the plot where the Bratz have to make their own clothes, but we don't have any part in that. Like, Bratz Girls Really Rock, I think, is quite a terrible game overall, but the level of the fashion design that they had in that game, where you could design like so many different aspects of the clothes, was so much fun. And designing clothes is like a really fun aspect of the old Bratz games, but for this one, no, it's not there. They took that out completely. There's no games where you stalk people. You know how in the old ones, you know, you had to like creep up on the Tweevils, and if you got too close, like it would fail, and you had to like sneak around, or you had to sneak around Berdine's office and try not to step on the papers. Those mini games, nothing like that. It's literally just run around and talk to people. And then there's some other things you can do, like the yoga, the races. You can race on your scooter or your rollerblades or your hoverboard. Things like that, but it's not got any of the kind of old mini games that we know and love. Running around putting up posters, that kind of thing. Nothing like that. One of the things that is missing is quite a few of the characters. Now, I have got on my pros list that there are a lot of characters in this game, more than I expected. Characters like Megan, Fianna, Roxy, people like that appear. Felicia's a big character. So lots of people that we know and love from Bratz, but there's also a lot of kind of characters that are quite big in the Bratz universe that aren't in this game. And the one, if you watched my Let's Play, you will see I kept complaining about it, is Cameron. And Cameron is a huge part of the Bratz universe. He's been in, I think he was the second Bratz boy. Like Dylan I think was the first, and then Cameron was the second. So like a huge part of the Bratz history. And he's always been a big part of the Bratz media as well. Like him and Dylan are in Rock Angels. They appear at the end of the Diamonds movie. They're in Bratz Paris, because Cameron, you know, starts going out with that model who's trying to poison everyone. If you haven't seen Bratz Paris, you absolutely should. It's chaos. But they're big parts of the Bratz, like, narrative. They're in like most of the TV show episodes. They've been in a huge amount of lines. Like, and Cameron and Dylan are best friends. That's always established. And he's been in all the games. So to have him suddenly not be in this game and have his role replaced with Ethan is just really odd to me. I don't think Cameron was in the Bratz live action movie, admittedly, and I'm pretty sure Ethan was. So I don't know if they're going with that. Like, I don't know if they were trying to emulate like that for some reason. But for whatever reason, they didn't include Cameron. And it really annoys me, because he's my favourite Bratz boy. Him and Chloe are my Bratz OTP, and I'm just furious that he's not in this game. I just wanted to point that out. But he's not the only one that's missing. A big loss for this game is the fact that they haven't included Bradine or the Tweevils. Now, the Tweevils are actually mentioned really early on in the game. Chloe is saying something, and she's like, something, the Tweevils. And I was like, oh my god, the Tweevils! But they didn't ever appear, and neither does Bradine. And there's no mention of your thing or anything like that. And I just think by not having them in, it takes away a lot of that, like, challenge for the Bratz. Like, they always were having to compete with your thing, and the Tweevils were always getting up to stuff. Like, the Tweevils snuck into their hotel room and stole their tickets to Pins, so then they had to pretend to be a rock band so that they could get into the club. Or when in the Forever Diamonds game, like, Bradine and the Tweevils kidnapped Sheridan and locked her in a wardrobe in the hotel room so that they wouldn't be able to go to the final of the competition. Like, they're always there causing trouble for the Bratz, and it gives the Bratz something to have to overcome, like a conflict to overcome. And maybe I'm being, like, too hard on them here, but it just feels like in this game, because they don't have, like, a rival or any kind of enemy to have to try and to have to compete with, everything just sort of happens, but there's no difficulty. And the only struggle that ever occurs is for other characters, and the Bratz just sweep in and solve it. So, like, at one point, you know, they meet a boy band, but their guitarist has gone AWOL. So then the Bratz are like, that's okay, we can play guitars. We'll be one of your guitarists, you know? And they just like save the day. But nothing ever happens that makes the Bratz life difficult. They just fix everyone else's life. And I don't know if I'm just being really like dramatic here and people are going to be like, Lauren, it's the Bratz, stop taking it so seriously. But like, I mean, I don't want to have to pull out my copy of The Writer's Journey from my shelf over here, but a general hero's journey is supposed to have conflict for them to overcome. That's the standard of narrative writing for anything, is there's supposed to be at least something. Even your most basic rom-com will have the bit where the couple have some kind of misunderstanding and fall out and then they have to get back together again. You know, like, there has to be some kind of challenge for your protagonist to overcome, and the Flaunt Your Fashion doesn't have that, because everything just sort of happens to the girls and they just sort of get everything that they want. And again, I realise it's a kids game, it's Bratz, you know, I'm not expecting them to have to like save the world, and I'm not expecting like a portal to hell to open up. But they did always have, this is the thing, is Bratz always had the most ridiculous plots. Like I said, Bratz Paris, they are sent to Paris to pretend to be fashion models because someone is poisoning the models and Byron tasks them with figuring out who it is. There are people dying. There are people being poisoned, and it's Bratz. And then in Forever Diamonds, like I said, in the game, like Sheridan gets kidnapped. And in my Let's Play, I kept joking that she'd been kidnapped by the Mafia because it's New York. But really, it's the Pink Mafia, Bernadine and the Tweevils. But even in the movie, like, you know, Mandy betrays them and she steals the go-go boots and she goes running into the subway and climbs onto the subway line. And then her and Yasmin, I'm pretty sure it is, are like running along the subway line getting chased by a train. There was always so much drama in the Bratz, and then in this game there's like no drama, nothing bad ever happens, and I just feel like that's a huge loss, and it probably would have been like helped if they had the Tweevils in there to at least create a little bit of drama. But there's no Bradine, there's no Tweevils, no one's yelling Mother of Pink, and it's just a shame. And the other person missing from the game is Byron, and who doesn't love Byron Powell? He's absolutely positively brilliant, and there's no Byron, so that's a shame. Marco Barretti, or Marco Bartoli as I kept calling him, basically kind of fulfills that role of like the Bratz mentor who like gets them into like exclusive events and stuff. But I miss Byron, what can I say? My next couple of things are just like two little things that I think are worth mentioning. You can't change your Bratz character at will. In the old games you could. You just would go to the apartment, or you could call them. You could get your phone out and call them to meet you in a store, and they would just show up and you could swap. And it meant that you could complete the tasks as different characters, and you had to, because certain missions were locked to certain characters, so you had to play as each of them. And it meant that you could get all the girls and dress them all up, so you could have them all looking the way that you want to. You could take them all to City Looks and do all their makeup, do all their hair, get them all in specific outfits, which was great because when they showed up in a cutscene it would look ridiculous because you could have them all designed in the most outrageous costumes and it would look wild. Whereas in this game you can only change your Bratz character when you move to a new city, so you have to do Stylesville entirely as one character, Barcelona as one character, Seoul as one character, New York as one character, which means that like at one point I had Jade dressed up as Wednesday Addams, but all the other girls were wearing beachwear and they all looked perfectly normal, and then there was just this one goth chick right in the middle. And it's like, it's just a shame because it's like, why can I not dress them all up? Why can I not dress all the girls up the way that I want to? Why do they all have to be wearing the same outfit in different colours and then Wednesday Addams is here? I just think it's one of those things, it's like, it doesn't really affect the game that much, but it's just one of those things that you used to be able to do that you can't anymore, and I don't understand why. I don't know why they took that option out. I don't understand the logic of doing that. The other thing that I put down is that there's no voice cutscenes. Now, the game is voiced, and there are cutscenes, I suppose, in that the characters appear on the screen, the big speech bubble appears in the middle, and they speak the lines, there's voice acting. But there's these other cutscenes that are like completely silent. There's like hardly even, it's just like some very low music in the background, and it's honestly kind of unsettling because the girls are doing really expressive faces, but there's no voice, there's no speaking. And even the final cutscene of the game has no voices whatsoever, and it is honestly like, it just, in a way it's kind of creepy, but it's also like a huge letdown, because it's like it's the final scene of the game and it's just this sort of silent scene without anything, any speech or anything, and it's just kind of like, oh, is that it? I don't know, I just don't get why they didn't have voice cutscenes. I don't know what the logic was to not including that. If you've got voice acting in the game, why not voice the cutscenes? Bizarre choice, in my opinion. So I'm kind of at the end of my list, but I've got a couple more things to say. The main criticism I have seen of this game from people online is that it's too short, and I can't disagree. It is very short. I completed it in about 6 hours, or 6.5 hours, I think. But I have seen people do walkthroughs where they've completed it in 3 or 4 hours. There is definitely a walkthrough that's done in 3. And that's not great, because that's basically one sitting. You know what I mean? Like, you can, if you play games for a few hours a day, you've completed that in one go. And considering that's maybe fine if your game costs like a few pounds, maybe like a £5, maybe even a £10 at a push if it's really good. But this is a £30, well, it's £35 at most stores. I got it for £32 off of the game collection. In America, I think it's $40. That's quite expensive for a game that you can complete in one sitting, it has to be said. So I think people are justified in complaining about the length of the game. I think it wouldn't be such a big issue if the game wasn't as expensive as it is. But with the price point that it's at, you would expect more game for what you paid. And that is a problem. I would say it is short. And I checked my previous Let's Plays of the old games, and it does seem to be shorter than the old games were. So yeah, definitely the length is an issue. There's not really anything I can say to justify that one. It's just a very short game. And this is my last point, and it's not really a point. It's just something I wanted to talk about, but it's kind of hard to explain, because I can understand obviously the reason why it is the way it is, and I can't really criticize it. It's just something I kind of wanted to talk about more than anything, is that I feel like Bratz at the moment is in a really odd place when it comes to their demographic. So this game is obviously, it's PEGI 3, so it's a game for kids, or it's a game for anyone, you know, family friendly, content for everyone kind of situation. So it's not like I was expecting to turn it on and it was going to be like an adult oriented game. But what I find strange is that the Bratz social media at the moment is very much aiming towards adults, people who were Bratz fans as children. They're doing like the Jennifer's Body clip and the Legally Blonde clip, and they threw that that Cult Gaia launch party where everyone was like getting drunk and there was like foam, and you know, people were wearing very, very skimpy outfits, and clearly they're doing a lot of stuff for the older Bratz fans, people who were fans as children. So like, you know, I was a fan of Bratz right from when they first came out, and I'm 27 now, and there's people who are older than me that are still Bratz fans, and they're obviously doing a lot to try to play into the nostalgia of being a Bratz fan. They're re-releasing old dolls, and they put clips up all the time of like the old games or moments from the old movies and stuff on their Instagram, and people will be in the comments like, oh my god, this is my favorite, like I love this movie. Or people quite often say that they still play the old games. So I just find it kind of weird that they then went ahead and made a game that's so radically different from the old games, because if you're trying to kind of play in, I'm not saying I mean that the game should come out and be Jennifer's Body, just that I think that if you're playing into the idea of nostalgia and trying to get older fans to buy your stuff, it just seems like an odd choice to make a game that's so radically different from the old ones that people loved. And I know obviously the people who control the Bratz Instagram have nothing to do with the game. I'm not trying to say that they do. I know that's a completely different thing. I just mean that overall, like the Bratz executives, I'm not sure why they're telling the marketing people to like brand everything and try and encourage like nostalgia from older fans, but then go into their games division and being like, hey, make a game that's nothing like the old games so that the older fans are going to be like, the fuck is this? It just seems like a really weird situation, and I'm just not sure what the logic was there. I feel like they would have been better making a game that's more like the old games to try and encourage the older fans to buy it. I feel like that's kind of where your sales would have come from. Like, I don't know how many children bought this game, like young children, but I feel like the majority of their sales are going to be people who used to play Bratz and want to play the new one, in which case it would have been more logical to make a game more like the old ones. But that's just, like I say, I can understand the logic of them, you know, making a kid-friendly game and not doing that. It's just that I think it's probably I just think it's an odd decision in terms of, like, where they are right now with their marketing and stuff like that. I just wanted to say that. I just thought it was something worth saying. Anyway, that's the end of my cons list. So, as much as that was obviously a lot of stuff that's negative, I'm not saying I didn't enjoy the game. I did. If you watch my Let's Play, you will see I'm having a really fun time. I'm laughing. I'm cracking jokes. I am, like, having a really good time with it. I did enjoy it. But does that mean that it's perfect? No. Does it mean that there's a lot of things I think they could have done better to make it an even more enjoyable experience? Absolutely. These are just things I think they could have done better, and I don't think they're that difficult because I'm not asking for stuff that hasn't been done before. This is literally just things that were present in the previous games that came out on the PS2 back in the mid-2000s. So we're talking like 15 years ago on consoles from like 3 generations ago. You know, it's not, I'm not asking for anything insane here. I'm asking for stuff that was possible on a PS2, so should absolutely be possible on a PS5, is all that is. But there are still a lot of things I liked about the game, so let's get into the pros. My number one in here is just that the game is fun. Now, I realise that's subjective. I logged onto YouTube one day and someone on my recommended feed, there was a video that someone had posted that said, this is my kind of game, and it was a thumbnail of Bratz Flaunt Your Fashion. And then I scrolled down my recommended, and a couple of videos lower down on my recommended was someone with a thumbnail of Bratz Flaunt Your Fashion, and the caption, the title was, "This game poisoned my water supply, burned my crops, and set a plague upon my house." So definitely subjective. Some people, I have seen reviews where people have criticised it. I have seen some people who are big Bratz fans who have criticised the game. I personally had a really good time with it. I thought it was super fun. I thought it could be better, but I did have a fun time with it. But that, like I say, is subjective. There are people who have not had a good time with it. And if you want a review from someone who genuinely didn't enjoy it, there are other ones out there. But if you're coming to ask me my opinion, I thought it was fun. I would play it again. Probably not right now, because I just played it, but I would play it again. The script, I've put down, the script feels like Bratz. It feels like Bratz, you know, they say things like scorching and rocking, and it feels like an old Bratz game, like or like the Bratz movies. It feels familiar. It feels like the Bratz that we know and love. So I think that's great. The voice acting. The voice acting is very good, and they did get back 2 of the original three of the original voice actors, although Roxy doesn't sound like herself, but it is. Roxy is voiced by her original voice actor, but the voice doesn't sound anything like her Roxy voice, but it is her. Jessica DeCicco or DeCicco, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. Olivia Hack is still voicing Chloe. She was the original Chloe voice actress from the TV show, the movies, the games. She is the Chloe. I absolutely love her. Olivia Hack is a queen, and I'm so glad she's in this game because she, like, the girl that took over from her was good, but there is only one Chloe. Oki Banks, the third, also is back as Dylan. Again, there's only one Dylan in my heart, and he does so well. He's so good. But all the other girls, like the girl who plays Jade has got it spot on. She sounds so good. She sounds really close to the way that Soleil did the original voice back in the day. The girl that voiced Sasha, again, is brilliant. She sounds so Sasha. Yasmin's voice sounds too young, in my opinion. She sounds like she's about 12. But she's still good. She's a good voice actress. It's just that for me, I think Yasmin sounds a bit young. But she is great. And honestly, the voice acting across the board is just really good. It's great. I can't complain. I put that there's lots of characters. Like I say, we are missing some of the important ones like Cameron, Bradine, and Byron in the Tweevils. But there are loads of characters that you know and love. All 4 Bratz girls, Dylan, Ethan, Fiona, Roxy, Megan, Felicia, you know, just loads of characters that we know and love from the series, and that's awesome to me. It was really fun getting to encounter them, being like, oh my god, look, it's Megan, you know, like, it was great. It was really fun getting to see all of them, and even the new characters are fun as well, like the boy band that they meet, and Marco Beretti and all that kind of thing. Like, there's some really fun characters in there. There's loads of nice Bratz references. They talk about things like Alonce. They talk about things that happened in previous games, like in the movies and stuff. Like, this is clearly a canonical game, which is great. Like, this is part of the same overall narrative, so they do talk about things every now and then, things that have happened in the past, things that we all remember. So that's really great. It's just nice to see that they put in the effort to connect this to the overall Bratz world and not just be this kind of drop in the ocean that exists in like an echo chamber. It is part of the Bratz world that we know. So I love that. It's got a great selection of hair and makeup and clothes. I would have liked to see more hairstyles personally, but it does have a lot. The makeup's really nice. It's got that is one thing I completely forgot about. That one thing to mention: you can't put the makeup on their face anymore. The makeup is just selected from a menu. You can't do their makeup. I know that was something we all loved because you could draw all over their face and make them look so awful, and I did that in every game. You can't do that anymore, and you have to do the makeup that the game gives you. You just pick it from a menu. You can't do their makeup. I forgot to mention that. I forgot to put that in my cons, but that is definitely a con. But the makeup choices they give you are nice, and there are some really garish ones. You can combine them in different ways to make them look truly awful. And that is, of course, why I'm here. I am here to make the Bratz look as bad as possible. Or to turn them into goths. One or the other. One or the other. And there's lots of clothes. They've got different clothes from different Bratz lines. There's like Rock Angels, Hot Summer Days, Beach Party, Flashback Fever, Play Sports. Loads of outfits. You can combine them in all different ways. And yeah, it's still super fun to dress your Bratz up and use them as a doll to put clothes on. So that's awesome. But that's everything I've written down for pros, which I realise isn't great. But I'm telling you, I had a fun time. But those are also the issues that this game has. And my final question is it worth £35 or £32 that I spent on it? Honestly, probably not. Do I regret paying that much for it? Kind of, because I noticed that it went into a Black Friday sale on most websites about 2 weeks after it came out. It released on, I think it was like the 4th of November, and by about the 14th or 16th of November, it was in Black Friday sales, and I was really annoyed that I bought it. I pre-ordered it, because if I'd waited a little bit, it would have been cheaper, but I genuinely didn't expect a game that had just released in November to be in a November Black Friday sale, but that's the situation we found ourselves in. But because of that, because it went into a sale so early, I imagine it will go on sale again. I think it was down at about £21 when I saw it in the sale. I imagine it'll be in Boxing Day sales, January sales. It will go on sale again. If you do want to play this game, I do think you'll have a fun time. It is enjoyable, but I would recommend that you wait and you get it for cheaper, because I don't think it is worth full price. Save your money, spend it on something else, honestly. But if it goes on sale, I do recommend it, because I do think you'll have fun. It's a nice little comfort game. It's a nice way to spend time without having to put too much thought into it. It's a nice way to just unleash your mind from all of the bad that's in the world and just go and have some fun with some Bratz, you know what I mean? That's just a nice way to spend your time. I just have a great time. But is it as good as the old games? No. Is it better than Bratz Girls Really Rock? That's a difficult one to answer, because I really hated Bratz Girls Really Rock, so probably. Although there are still things about Girls Really Rock that I would say are done better than this game, but Girls Really Rock did drive me mad. But it did have mini golf, and everyone loves a bit of mini golf. So there's that, at least. But yeah, so it's up to you. Ultimately, it's your decision. You can take what I said and take it seriously, or you can say, Lauren, you're talking shit, and throw my whole review in the bin. It is up to you. But these are my thoughts on Bratz Flaunt Your Fashion. Do with it what you will. But I'm glad you've been here. Thank you for coming. If you do want to watch my Let's Play, if you don't want to spend money on it, and you'd rather just watch some weird Scottish girl play the games and make a lot of jokes and dress straight up as Wednesday Addams, feel free to go and watch my Let's Play. It's on my channel under Loz Plays Bratz Collection. You can go and watch that, and you can get all the fun of the Bratz game without having to go and buy it and playing it yourself. But thank you for being here. I'll see you in whatever I put up next. I never know what it's going to be because I have no plans and just do stuff. But yeah, I'll see you then. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye everyone!